All right, let's dive into a massive economic puzzle. We're talking about India, a country where the economy has just been soaring, but for some reason, opportunity for its people hasn't really kept up. It's this incredible story of growth, but it's hiding a huge and frankly worrying paradox. So let's get into it.
So this is the big question, right? For decades, India's economy has been on an absolute tear. We're talking incredible rates of growth. But that growth, it never created the number of good, quality jobs that you would expect. So how can a nation's wealth just explode while real, widespread opportunity kind of stalls out? That is the puzzle we are going to piece together today. To solve this, we first need to pop the hood on the economy and see how it works. The easiest way to think about it is that there are three distinct engines. And, they're all supposed to be working together in harmony. Okay, so engine number one is the primary sector. This is the absolute foundation of everything. It's all the stuff we pull directly from the earth or from nature. So think farming, fishing, forestry, mining. This sector provides the raw materials for literally everything else. Next up, you've got the secondary sector. This is the industrial engine. It's the part of the economy that takes all those raw materials from the primary sector and actually makes things. This is where cotton gets turned into a t-shirt, or iron ore becomes the steel that goes into a new building. It's the manufacturing heart of the economy. And the third engine? That's the tertiary, or as it's more commonly known, the service sector. Now, this one's a little different. It doesn't produce physical goods. Instead, it provides all the services that keep society and the other two sectors running. We're talking about everything from transport and banking to software development, call centers, and even essential services like teachers and doctors. Okay, so you've got the three engines: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now let's look at how they've shifted and transformed in India over the last few decades. And believe me, this is where the story gets really, really dramatic. So how do we actually measure the size of these engines? Well, economists use a metric called gross value added, or GVA. You can just think of it as the total price tag on all the final goods and services produced in a year. It's basically a scorecard that tells us how much value each sector is creating. And when you look at India's total GVA over a 40-year period, the change is just staggering. We're not talking about a little bit of growth here. This is a full-blown economic explosion. But the really critical part of the story isn't just that it grew, it's where all that growth came from. By 2018, the picture had completely flipped on its head. That third engine, the service sector, became the undisputed champion, making up more than half of India's entire economic value. The other two sectors are, still there, but they're much smaller pieces of the pie. Now, this looks like a classic success story of a modernizing economy, right? Well, not quite, but. And this is a really, really big but. That amazing growth chart, the GVA, that's only half the story. Because when you stop looking at the money and start looking at where people actually work, the whole narrative just falls apart. I mean, it's a perfectly logical question. If the service sector is the king, if it's generating most of the country's wealth, then that must be where most of the jobs are, right? Wrong. Not even close. In fact, it's almost the exact mirror opposite of the GVA chart. The primary sector, the one contributing the least amount of value to the economy, is still by far the country's largest employer. Almost half the workforce is still in agriculture and related activities. And this is the core of the paradox. The economic engine has totally changed, but the job market has been left way, way behind. This massive gap points to a huge problem, especially in the agricultural sector, called disguised unemployment. It's a tricky concept. What it means is that even though people look like they're working, there are way more people doing a job than are actually needed. So everybody seems busy, but nobody is actually working to their full capacity or potential. Their labor is being diluted. To make this real, let's look at the example of Lakshmi. She's a small farmer, and her entire family, all 5 of them, work on their small plot of land. Now, they are all working. They're not idle. But the thing is, the farm doesn't actually need 5 people. You could take, say, 2 of them away and have them work in a factory, and the farm's output wouldn't drop at all. But the family's total income would go up. Now, imagine that situation multiplied by millions and millions of families across the country. That's disguised unemployment. But this whole paradox, it isn't just about the number of jobs available. It's also about the quality of those jobs. And to really understand that, we have to split the workforce into two very, very different worlds, the organized sector and the unorganized sector. So let's meet two people, Kanta and Kamal. Kanta works in the organized sector. That means she has a formal contract, she gets a regular monthly salary, she has fixed work hours, paid leave, and most importantly, job security. Her work life is stable, and it's protected by laws and regulations. Her neighbor, Kamal, well, he works in the unorganized sector. He's a daily wage laborer. He gets paid for the day's work, that's it. He has no contract, no benefits, no paid leave, and absolutely zero job security. He can be told not to come in tomorrow, just like that.
And here is the number that should just stop you in your tracks. Over 80% of India's entire workforce is like Kamal, not Kanta. The vast, overwhelming majority of workers are in this unprotected, insecure, unorganized sector. That means low pay and absolutely no safety net.
So let's just recap the problem. You have massive underemployment in rural India, and you have a huge insecure workforce everywhere else. This is the core challenge. So the question becomes, how does the country even begin to fix this? How do you create not just more jobs, but better jobs? Well, the path forward isn't just about building more giant tech parks in the big cities. A big part of the solution is tackling that underemployment right where it's worst, in the rural areas. So step one, he boosts agriculture itself by giving farmers access to cheap loans and better irrigation. Step two, you build rural infrastructure, things like better roads and storage facilities, so they can actually get their crops to market without them spoiling. And step three, which is so crucial, is to promote local, small-scale industries like food processing mills right there in the villages to create stable, non-farm jobs. But who's supposed to do all this? Who is responsible for driving this kind of massive foundational change? Well, this is where we have to distinguish between the two major players in any economy. The public sector, which is basically the government, and its main motive is public welfare. And the private sector, which is run by individuals and companies, and their main motive, naturally, is profit. Look, while the private sector is absolutely essential for creating jobs and innovation, there are just some things that are too big or not immediately profitable enough for private companies to handle on their own. Building nationwide infrastructure like roads and dams, making sure there's electricity, ensuring every single citizen has access to healthcare and education. These things form the very foundation of a society. The government, the public sector, has to step in and lay this groundwork to protect the most vulnerable and create an environment where everyone else can succeed. And that brings us right back to our central puzzle. India really is at a crossroads. We've seen this incredible yet deeply flawed growth story. We've seen the paradox of jobless growth and the deep, deep insecurity it creates for hundreds of millions of people. The solution isn't just up to the government, and it's not just up to private industry. It has to be both. So the real multi-trillion-dollar question for India's future is this: how will these two powerful forces come together to finally write a new economic chapter, one that doesn't just grow, but one that provides real opportunity and security for all 1.4 billion of its